Welcome back to Uncovering Real Estate, brought to you by the Brampton Real Estate Board. We're now in a final segment about second units. So Elizabeth and Heather, one question that many people have is that, I've already had a second unit registered before 1996. Do I need to register again? That's a common question.
Sure, and the answer is no.
Okay.
If you've previously registered under the old guidelines that were in place back at the end of the 90s and early 2000s, you do not need to register again under the new program.
Okay, that's a pretty straightforward, simple answer. I think most people will be delighted with that one. Another one that we've heard a lot is, I have a second unit that was granted legal non-conforming status by the city. Do I need to register now?
And the answer to that question is yes.
Okay.
Over the past 10 years, after the expiration of the last registration program, the city has deemed legal non-conforming approximately 340, 350 properties. So those properties may not have received the appropriate fire safety inspections and building permits and upgrades and electrical safety inspections. So those will be required to come forward and register now. All owners of those properties were notified sort of at the end of last year, and we're hoping that we've been given them 6 months to come forward and register the property as a legal non-conforming registered two-unit dwelling.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. What they won't be subject to, though, is the new limitations outlined in the zoning bylaw. So exactly how their property is, it can come forward and register. There's no review for compliance with the new restrictions.
Okay, excellent. Heather, you mentioned the benefits to having a second unit for most people. So just naturally follows that some people might inquire, could I have more than a second unit? Is there a possibility to have a third and a fourth unit?
Our policies and zoning regulations that we've put in place only permit one additional unit.
Okay.
So it's all based on that.
Okay, so just a second unit.
Correct.
Okay, so for the benefit of our viewers, please don't have any ideas or notions about a third and fourth unit. I think one question nowadays is quite common when people buy a new house. It's possible that it might already have a finished basement or a second unit. How would they go about knowing about the registration status of that second unit?
That's an excellent question, and we do get that a lot. We maintain a register. The city has a list of properties that have been legally registered both in the past and the ones that have now been recently registered. We're maintaining that. Right now, it's a phone call into the city building division to determine that, but we are in the process of developing an online tool that will allow people to access their property information, and it will tell you whether your unit is registered or whether even others on your street are registered. It will be a fully accessible and interactive program that will list all of the registered two-unit dwellings.
That's great. So whether it's online or in person, the ultimate result is that if you contact the city, you'll get an answer to that question.
That is correct.
Excellent. All right. Some people also sometimes reverse the process. So, they have a house with the second unit, but then they make the decision that, hey, maybe there's another kid on the way, or, maybe they have relatives coming over, parents bring their parents home or something, and they think, hey, I don't want a second unit anymore. What's the process to go back to a single family dwelling? Is that a complicated process, or is it simple?
It's very simple. If your second unit is allowed, then your single unit is also allowed. So converting back to a single detached dwelling does not involve anything from the city if you're not proposing any new construction. If you are making changes, though, to the interior, if you're reconfiguring the space to accommodate, maybe an additional bedroom, or you're taking out the kitchen, then that might require a building permit.
Okay.
But otherwise, there's no issue associated with converting back from a two-unit dwelling to a single detached dwelling.
Would there be any obligations, though, in terms of towards maybe the tenant who you've rented your second unit to, hypothetically?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you do have a tenant in place, then
Yeah.
yes, rules and regulations from the Landlord-Tenant Act will apply.
Okay.
You may obviously have to provide notice and possibly compensation if you're choosing to break a lease, but
Right.
that's between the landlord and the tenant.
And I'm guessing in most situations, if that decision has to be made, it's not a hasty decision. It's probably well thought out, and those sort of things are usually worked out.
That's correct, and there's certainly no pressure from the city to do so.
Okay, great. You know what? As we come towards the end of the show, I'm just going to ask some auxiliary questions, and that is, can I? Some people think that they can build a second unit anywhere. Is it possible to actually build a second unit in a garage or a shed? My gut instincts would be no, but I don't know.
I'll tell you, there's
Okay.
inside the garage, if
Okay.
that garage is attached to your house and it's a fairly large size to get
Yeah.
a second unit in there, then you can absolutely put a second unit in an attached garage.
Shows how much I know.
because it's part of your dwelling. What it's not permitted to do at this point in time is to have it in an accessory structure. So if you had a detached garage or
Right.
a large shed at the back of your home,
Okay.
then you would not be permitted to have a second unit in that. We call those granny suites or granny flats
Okay.
in the separate buildings, but right now it has to be part of the main dwelling.
It has to be part of the main dwelling. So if it's an attached garage, that's fine.
Exactly.
Would that be a scrutiny? Would that be open to more scrutiny in terms of, garages usually don't have the same levels of insulation? Is the inspection of that much more rigorous?
It's not so much more rigorous.
Okay.
If you haven't done the work, then the inspections are much easier. If you've done the work, you might have to uncover, pull out some drywall to make sure that you've got the proper insulation. But if you're just finishing a garage, it's the same building code requirements as it would be in a basement. In
Okay.
fact, possibly less, because you don't have the separation or ability to have to get out from the basement. So exiting from a garage is much simpler than exiting from a basement apartment.
That's really interesting, and I think you've cleared a lot of people's misconceptions over there with that answer. Heather, as we come towards the end of the show, you look at Brampton; it's a growing city, right? It's one of Canada's top 10 biggest cities. It's only going to grow further, with new immigration, new opportunities, new businesses, and I think second units are a reality.
Yes.
Looking from your perspective, do you think the city is on track? It's got a good system in place to handle the increasing emergence of second units?
Yes, I believe we do. We spent a lot of time and got a lot of public input. So when we put the process together, we're feeling quite confident that it will work well. It's just been in place since June of 2015, and we are committed to reviewing that, which we do with all our processes to
In fact,
monitor.
there's another opportunity for public output, right?
Correct. So
Yeah.
we will be reporting back in the fall of this year,
Okay.
and we are collecting any feedback that anybody has on the process and how that's working for people. We invite them to let us know, and we certainly, through the processing of applications, are asking for feedback. So we welcome those comments, and we will be reporting back to our council in the fall of this year on the success of the
Fantastic.
program.
Heather and Elizabeth, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, I hope you learned a lot about second units and basement apartments. If that's the way you want to use your second unit, we'll be back with another great episode of Uncovering Real Estate, brought to you by the Brampton Real Estate Board next week.